And so we're on day 4. This lesson will probably only go till about 10 till. So let's leave it open for discussion. And I'm going to ask for your patience, as I have before. What I'm teaching tonight isn't conventional. 50% that way, or 50%, everything is created, everything in 6 days. I'm okay with either one, and I ask you to give me a little bit of leeway. If you think I'm teaching heresy, just let me know. And all right, let's pray for the Bible study. Father, again, we're thankful to be. Thankful for our Bibles. Lord, help us to understand them, apply them to our life. In Jesus' name. Amen. All right. Day 4, verse 14. Are you ready? All right. And God said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years." So these lights are in the firmament. So is the firmament in the local atmosphere and canopy, which the text would indicate from day 2. Day 2 tells us about the firmament. Look at verse 6. And God said, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. And God made the firmament divide the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament. And it was so. And God called the firmament heaven," again capital H, because He named it. And doesn't mean it's God's dwelling place. "And the evening and the morning were the second day." So again here, you have my rough drawing of what this would have possibly looked like. Earth being here, obviously. Just ignore the colors. And then the water canopy of some sort that surrounds. Now this would be cut in half, right? So it would be a complete sphere of water of some sort all the way around the earth in all directions. Some people, that's part of what people call the canopy theory. Now, if you look up the canopy theory, you're going to get some crazy side things like that. Everything looked pink and all this sorts of neat stuff, and they try to guess exactly what the canopy was. I'm trying to guess what the canopy was, because when I try to guess it, if I say where it's a mist, then people say, well, when a mist turns into a liquid and falls, it heats, and so that would have baked the planet at the flood. Well, if it goes from ice to liquid, then that would actually have the opposite effect and would cool. And then I would start bringing up the ice age at that point, but I'm not a scientist, and maybe we'll talk about that during the flood. So, God created, and the firmament would be this: divide the waters from the waters, and the waters under the firmament, and the waters above the firmament. So there's waters underneath. We still have those. No waters here except for the humidity of the air, and then this water canopy. This water canopy would block UV rays. It would keep the temperature constant throughout the globe. Seasons wouldn't be a thing. Everything would grow bigger. Animals would be bigger, last longer, grow longer. Humans would live a lot longer. Hence, Adam living as long as he did. Methuselah, 979 years, and all that sorts of neat stuff. So that's what we find on day 2. Now, on day 4, when it says here then in verse 14, and God said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven." Notice heaven is singular. And so when I first made this, I believe erroneously put Genesis 1:14 and the stars over here. Because, and God said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and seasons and for days and for years." I'm assuming, first off, that these lights look like stars. They could look like northern and southern lights. They could look like all sorts of neat things that we never really even thought of. But, so the lights in the firmament, first off, we're going to get there in a moment. I don't believe, I'm 50-50 that those are stars. I believe it's talking about lights in the local firmament, this firmament here. Or is this the firmament of the universe, which, if you look at the scripture from day 2, doesn't seem to indicate that. Verse 15. "And let them be for lights in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth, and it was so." The stars really don't give much light on earth. Give a little bit, but not significant. And giving light also because the sun and moon wouldn't be as bright as if they had this canopy. Verse 16. And God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night. Now, from that, we would assume that he's talking about the sun and the moon. I would assume, unless it's the lights in the firmament and there's a greater light in the firmament, it could be just the light hits the firmament from the sun, and so that helps us see during the day. Well, helps them see during the day, and then the night. Of course, we understand that the moon is not a light in of itself, but that it is a reflection of light. It reflects the glory of the sun, and But notice this phrase here at the end of verse 16, and this is the phrase that's thrown me off for now a good 9 years. He made the stars also. So, two great lights then do not, or made in my notes, do not infer that the moon gives off light. But he made the stars also, to me, is a separate statement from the lights in the firmament. Now, backing off real quick, I'm going to be clear. Creation was a 6-day event. Adam and Eve were 6,000 years ago. Dinosaurs walked the earth with man. I'm not saying they're holding hands, but there's plenty of space on the planet for all these animals to be in different spots. The canopy explains dinosaurs. The flood explains why we don't have them anymore. Yes, they would have been on the ark, but Noah didn't take on full-size adult animals. Everything's explainable. Everything makes sense, and to refute, to look at that and scoff at it all just makes too much sense. But now, just to be clear, there was no sin until Adam sinned. Well, I guess Satan sinned first, but Adam sinned, Eve sinned, and that passed on to all of the human race. And there was no death or sin on the planet until Adam did that. So that would mean that there can be no gap, that there was no world between Genesis 1:1 and 1:2. There was no gap theory and no dinosaurs beforehand because they would have died off. And then there had been death before Adam and Eve sinned. So, but notice here in verse 17, and by the way, I'm going to keep on explaining this here. And by the way, if you believe day 4 is talking about the sun, moon, and stars on day 4, it was the earth, then it was the firmament, then it was the sun and moon, and then it was the stars, and then all of creation started with the earth, and that day 1 was right there. I'm 100% for you and wouldn't argue the point. Just so you know, I wouldn't argue the point ever. But anyways, look at verse 17. And God set them in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth. Now, as Judd pointed out, that sounds like it could be pointing back to the stars in verse 16, and then that would indicate that the firmament would be the complete universe. However, I take that to be referring, just restating verse 15 and talking about the making of the firmament, and he made the stars also just being a separate statement. And to rule over the day and over the night, and divide the night light from darkness. And God saw that it was good, and the evening morning were the fourth day. So day 4, a lot of activity. Now, I want to point out here first that the word created only happens once in verse 1. Everything is so far revealed. Water was present on day 1. Land was present on day 3, but it was just revealed on day 3. Plants were to bring forth, and that's why some do think that the plants were maybe transplanted from heaven, although God created them. He didn't say create; He just said brought forth. But we don't get to the word create or creature until we get to animals, until we get to living flesh, and I find that interesting. Let's turn to Psalm 136. Questions or comments so far? Of course, I've already taught this. We're just getting a little bit more in depth on today. Psalm 136. And look here at verse 5. We'll read 5 through 9. To him that by wisdom made the heavens, for his mercy endureth forever. So there you see heavens, plural. To him that stretched out the earth above the waters, for his mercy endureth forever. To him that made great lights, for his mercy endureth forever. The sun to rule the day, for his mercy endureth forever. The moon and the stars to rule the night, for his mercy endureth forever. Psalm 136 still makes a differentiation between the sun, the moon, the stars, and the great lights in verse 7. Even Psalm does it. J. Vernon McGee, I was reading through all sorts of commentaries. Which, by the way, if you come to my house and look on my shelf, I don't have a lot of commentaries up there. You can generally get them for free, have them on eSword. And that eSword program, I suggest it, is the best Bible program I've ever seen. Yes?
So typically, and I don't know from translations and everything, if they put a colon there after it. So not so much differentiating between the great lights and the sun and the stars, but saying here's the great lights, colon, this is what the great lights are. That's typically what a colon does, it indicates.
But the word also at the end though.
What's that?
Are you referring to Genesis or are you referring to Psalms?
Psalms.
Oh, okay.
At the end of verse 7, there's a colon.
I kind of see the sun, moon, and stars as the great lights.
So yeah. And back in Genesis, verse 14, 15, or verse 15, 16, 17 are elaborating similar to this, so it lines up with Psalms where it's not a separate event, but elaborating. He made the great lights where he hung them there in the firmament, and then it goes on to say the stars. He made the stars also. It's just saying, by the way, the stars, he made those also. Those are the great lights too.
So you're saying the great lights are the stars?
They're all sun, moon, and stars.
Like I said, I wouldn't argue with somebody that, to me they look like separate statements just because of the word also. And the fact that they are separated. But, like I said, if I'm fine with the other, and that they're all done on day 4. So as I was saying, when I was looking through commentaries, if you get eSword, eSword.net, it's free on your phone, it's free on an iPad, but it costs to put it on your computer, I think, or it costs to put it on your iPad. And you can download Matthew Henry's commentary, all these sorts of neat things. None of them even touched on this except for one, J. Vernon McGee, who said this: God didn't create the sun and the moon at this time. They were already up there. God just brought them around into position. Again, I'm not saying, we don't trust commentaries. In fact, just the fact I couldn't find anything said any of them. All right, let's go to Exodus chapter 20. Exodus chapter. Man, I'm going to have you flipping back and forth. Sorry about that. Sometimes I try to make my notes in order for you. Exodus chapter 20, look at verse 11 here. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that in them is, and rested the seventh day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. And again, Exodus chapter 20, verse 11, heaven is singular. Genesis chapter 1, heaven is singular. Genesis chapter 1, verse 8, heaven is singular. Genesis chapter 1, verse 9, verse 14, verse 15, verse 17, and verse 20, heaven is singular. The first time it's plural is in Genesis chapter 2 and verse 1. We'll get back there in a moment. Go to Job 26. I think this might have been what Ross was referring to a moment ago. Yes, Job 26. And again, my struggle with Job is I wanted to know. of God is pure. Every word is where it should be. Every word is perfect. But then if Job's 3 friends say something and God rebukes them for being wrong, does that mean that whatever they say is correct? But at least Job said this, so we don't have to worry. Job 26, verse 10. Let's read down through verse 13. He hath compassed the waters with bounds, until the day and night come to an end. The pillars of heaven tremble and are astonished at his reproof. And again, verse 11 is, when people, look at the Bible and they want to mock it, pillars of heaven, they put that, pillars on the edge like it's holding up heaven. And nobody thinks that, but we will be mocked for that. Verse 12, he divided the sea with his power, and by his understanding he smiteth through the proud. But notice here, verse 11, the pillars of heaven tremble, one just singular. By his spirit he has garnished the heavens, plural. 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 2, I knew a man above Christ, man in Christ above 14 years ago. Talking about when Paul was stoned. Whether in the body I cannot tell, whether in the body I cannot tell, God knoweth. Such a one caught up into the third heaven. And we understand typically that the first heaven be the atmosphere, the second heaven be space, and then the third heaven be God's dwelling place. So, 2 Corinthians 12:2. So on day 1, where we find that the water was there, day 3, we find that the land was there. It's just revealed on day 3. Day 4, the plants brought forth. Day 5, we have creatures, and the word create found again. Ushers, the annuals of the world, Dr. Floyd Nolan Jones, wall charts, chronologies. You get to the Old Testament, it goes back to Adam and Eve being created 6,000 years ago. God never questioned that. It could be that the universe outside the earth was created on day 4, and if that would be the case, I'm 100% for it. But just to think about it, tonight, I hope to go up, that's still planned, right? Isaac, when you leave, oh wait, you're staying the night, are you? Hunter, what time are you going home?
I don't know.
We have to take you.
Where?
So tonight, I haven't got, get out and look at the comet yet. And it's funny, the only telescope I have is mounted on top of an AR, so we're going to be aiming an AR at some telescope, trying to find it. And so, did they make you guys website? Can you see it with the naked eye?
Yeah.
Okay.
For
Binoculars
binoculars.
or the scope, right? Okay.
Actually, the binoculars work better than just scope.
Really? Do we have binoculars? Okay. And so, but here's an interesting thought. With the speed of light, again, when we go outside and we look at a star and we see that star, the light that came off of it is a proton, and you can't even define it for sure if it's a ray, if it's a particle, that left that star billions of light years away. And it's amazing, though, that thing that's given off, when you look at it, the moment you look at it, one of the protons from that star is absorbed by your eye and translated into an electronic image that's now stored in your brain. Isn't that cool? And the way the speed of light works, I've talked about this before. Again, I'm not a physicist. But if we were to, did somebody doubt that? Okay, but if we're to travel the speed of light, which is impossible, part of the reason it's impossible because once you hit the speed of light, travel is instantaneous, which is interesting because God, the Bible says God is light. And so, if you look at the energy it takes to go the speed of light, it just gets exponential the closer you get, mathematically. Again, I don't understand all that stuff. But when you are traveling the speed of light, it's seemingly instantaneous, which is interesting. So if I were to travel to something that's light years away, and I traveled near the speed of light, I would get there, and the time that it takes to get there, to me, would seem less than the actual time on Earth it took me to get there. Yet the person on Earth would still be watching, and the time would pass. So if I were to, and again, I'm not going to get into the numbers because I understand them, but if I were to travel for a year at the speed of light, then come back at the speed of light, the amount of time that would pass on earth would be a lot, but however, I would only be 2 years old. And the way light works is just amazing. You think about how those distances and everything. So then we're left with two options with that. So if everything was created in the 6 days, remember, God created everything mature. The first tree didn't have just one ring. It had many rings. Adam and Eve weren't infants. They were full-grown people. So, if God created a star that's 6 billion light years away, He could also make it so that I see light that's 6 billion light years away without having to be 6 billion light years old. I'm okay with that. Or if it's the other way, and then when I'm talking about the stars already being there, then there's no issue there either. So, that being said, there's day 4. I'm still going to talk about day 5, Becca. Any questions or comments, discussion on day 4? Yes, Ron?
On day 1, where is the water canopy? Is it still in place on day 1 in the Bible, or is it gone by then?
Well, it's not formed until day 2.
The water canopy.
It's gone at the flood.
So that will
What?
The water canopy went away at the flood.
Yeah, it went away at the flood.
Right.
But so remember, on day 1, waters covered the face of the deep, and then they were separated on day 2 vertically, and then on day 3 separated vertically for land to appear.
Okay. All right. This is class.
Yeah. And so again, and I know all of you believe this, but if we're going to read the Bible, you cannot take the days of creation anything other than 24-hour periods. For many reasons. Evening and the morning of the first day, God defined what a day was. You can't have plants surviving for eons or thousands of years with no sunlight, no cross-pollination, no wave pollination because of bees, no hummingbirds, no nothing, and no humans breathing carbon dioxide. If we're going to believe the Bible, we just have to believe the Bible. Jesus was under the impression that Genesis chapter 1 through 8, or 1 through 11, were accurate. Paul thought it was accurate. So for us to tell people, well, don't worry about that whole creation of 6,000 years ago, just believe Jesus. Well, Jesus thought it was accurate. So you have a small problem telling somebody that. Any other questions, any other comments? Yes?
It makes sense that everything was created mature, but I was wondering if it says that, if it talks about that.
So her question was, it makes sense that everything is created mature, but if it says that, and what I'm getting at is just from reasoning, because unless we found a tree with one ring in it, it would only have 6,000 right now, I guess, but just that everything was created mature and reproducing, we assume right away. Nothing was created as, God didn't make puppies, He made dogs. Didn't make infants, made adults. So if everything's mature, then that would explain the distance for everything, or light. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I was just wondering if it says that.
Not that I can remember. I think it's just implied. Is it? Does it say that anywhere?
It
Just
just
got
says
slides.
in verse 11, let the earth bring forth grass and her yielding seed. So in order to yield seed, you have to be mature.
Very good.
Also, like a habitat for animals' life, it wouldn't be conducive if it was all in its infant stage. If you made an adult bird, or even food-wise, for Adam and Eve.
So, yeah, just like that, it's implied and we reason it. I don't think it actually says it, but we see that, and from that get that everything's created mature. Not saying old, not saying decrepit, still perfect but mature. Anything else? All right, let's look at day 5. small controversy last week about what I'm about to say tonight. Thank you very much, Dan, for throwing a monkey wrench in my teaching about locomotion. So day 5 we have the fish and the fowl. Look at verse 20. And God said, let the waters bring forth abundantly the moving creature. So that's now the first time we have the word creature. It's interesting. And again, I'm not, I would never die on a hill that, talks about, maybe our plans were transferred from heaven, regrown here. Whatever. If God created them here, that's fine too. The moving creature that hath life, the fowl that may fly above the earth in the open firmament of heaven. And again, firmament would be defined by local, just by that, heaven being singular. And God created great whales, and every living creature that moveth, which the water bringeth forth abundantly after their kind, and every winged fowl after his kind. And God saw that it was good. And God blessed them, saying, be fruitful, multiply, and fill the waters in the seas. Now remember, that word fill is the same Greek or Hebrew word male, meaning it's translated replenish. So fill is fine. And let fowl multiply in the earth, and even more on the fifth day. So all the things necessary for animal life are now created. God creates the air, the water, animals, everything short of us. So one of these Bible studies, I'm going to then teach the opposite, and we're going to talk about questions for evolutionists. And when I say teach the opposite, I don't mean teach the other side is correct, but teach it as how ridiculous it is. Now, be careful when we're talking about evolution, because if we say, well, I didn't come from no monkey, well, actually, evolutionists don't really believe that we came straight from a monkey. It's division and the way everything branches out, but still, there's billions of humans, millions of monkeys, and nothing in between. There's no such thing as any evidence of transitional evidences of transitional animals between all of them. And also, if you're going to believe in evolution and the primordial soup, and that all living beings came out of that, remember that every living being, every species, has to have a male and a female compatible with each other at every generation and every step of evolution, otherwise you lose it. The chances of that, it's just mind-blowing that we would look at that and say, every fish, every dog, everything always had to have a male and a female. Now, the interesting thing is, if somebody were to be born, right now in America, how far in evolution are we separated from somebody who lives, say, in Mongolia? If we as humans stopped, evolving 100,000 years ago, why did we not learn to write and have a civilization and things like that until 10,000 years ago? And why all these different things that we're going to talk about, that just evolution does not make sense. The mathematics are not there. All right, are you ready for this? We're going to do that at some other time. So, but notice here, God classifies animals by their locomotion, not their glands, their bones, breathing, or air. Dan? All right, let's go to Jonah. I'm still going to say that a penguin does generate a little bit of lift as it's going off the ice and into the water. Or are you going to say it's a fish?
I might be a bird as well.
I generate a little lift too.
Here we go. Does anybody have a relative or friend that has died from skydiving? Oh, that's good. Because sometimes you see people make comments if somebody does that, well, at least they died doing what they love. What, trying to flap their arms, trying to gain lift? I mean, you ever just stop and think when people say, well, at least they didn't die doing what they love?
Guarantee you died cussing.
Yeah, I prefer to live. Thank you. Alright. So, let's look at Jonah real quick. Jonah chapter 1 and verse 17. Now the Lord had prepared a great fish to swallow up Jonah. And Jonah was in the belly of the fish 3 days and 3 nights. So Jonah was swallowed by what? Fish. So let's go to Matthew chapter 12 and verse 40. 12:40. So now this is again Jesus speaking. Matthew chapter 12 and verse 40. You there? For as Jonas was 3 days and 3 nights in the whale's belly, and Jesus doesn't know what a fish is. So shall the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. Now Jesus is speaking to a group of people that have probably never seen a whale. Never seen a picture of a whale? Drawing? They maybe had descriptions. Somebody goes out in the ocean and comes back. Does the Mediterranean Sea have any whales? I should have looked at that. I guess, well, they had at least one. Swallowed Jonah. And so then the question becomes, was Jonah swallowed by a fish or a whale? The answer is yes, but under modern times, would it be a fish or a whale? I don't know. Because God prepared it. So we talk, well, there's not a fish with a big enough throat. Well, God prepared it. That would stink. Just being, you'd be swallowed by this whale. You'd be being digested for 3 days and 3 nights. You're sitting in this, what's that stomach acid? Which acid's in the stomach? Which one? Hydrochloric acid is hydrochloric acid. And so you're just sitting there being slowly digested for 3 days. And so all of a sudden this fish or whale vomits you up on the beach and you run to Nineveh. And you preach a message, everybody listens, everybody gets saved, everybody repents. But they look at you, partially digested, your skin all white. You have this seaweed hanging off, you're picking kelp out of your mouth, and you're just trying to get there. And so then when you read the story of Jonah, the sun beats on his skin and he's in pain. So remember, God then prepared a gourd. And then it goes away and Jonah's in pain again. Why? Because his skin, he's partially digested. And so he gets mad. I get kind of mad too. And of course his reasoning for not wanting to go to Nineveh was, All right, so either Jesus doesn't know what a whale is, or whales and fish are the same in God's estimation. Now go to Deuteronomy chapter 14. We talked about this, but we're going to read it this time. Is there a fish that doesn't swim? No. There are birds that don't fly. Emu, ostrich, penguin, chicken.
That's a starfish.
Oh, it's a starfish. Okay.
Oh, man.
Just put it out there. Only the novels. This.
Deuteronomy chapter 14. Look at verse 11. Of all clean birds ye shall eat. So chicken you can eat. Verse 18. And the stork, and the heron after her kind, and the lapwing, and the what? Bat. And we throw, no, bats aren't birds. Well, already got that. So bat is a bird, or the bat is not what a bat is today, might be the other thing. And then now at the bottom of this sheet, I have penguins with 3 question marks after last week. I'm just happy that we can think and start bringing out that sort of neat stuff that might be anomalies, and finding holes and stuff, and learning. It's all good stuff. Love it. A seal? An otter? I don't know.
Genesis 1:21 says, "And every winged fowl after his kind."
Ooh. Oh. Is there a difference between a fowl and a bird in the Bible? Because the Bible says winged fowl. There could be a winged, that could imply an unwinged fowl. I don't know. Leave me alone. What? Could be.
Actually, they move through the water with their wings like they're flying.
They're birds of the sea. Chicken of the sea. Tuna. Okay, so apparently we found a bunch of holes in the teaching there, but my whole point was that we change the classification of things, then look back at God and mock Him. I know you're not making fun of me, but we are having fun with it. And so we would look back at God and mock Him for these things. And we look, well, seed after its kind. Well, you know, squash. We know that's a vegetable now. Well, all right, now let's look at holes there. What has seeds, but that's a little bit easier to define. All right. Is there something that has a seed in it that grows underground? Kind of like, okay, but I'll keep on going while you're thinking. You know, unicorns are talked about in the Bible. And people mock the King James Bible because it talks about unicorns. But then it was afterwards that we developed this white horse with a big old horn out the center and said, this is a unicorn. Oh, now look what the Bible says. And so we developed a unicorn afterwards and then turn around and mock God, saying God that God's all for these horses that have rainbow tails or whatever they are. No.
I think that's common with, it could be more than you think too, with some of these questions. If you went back in time and talked to people back then and said, oh, this is this, they'd be like, no, that's wrong. You're the crazy one. I think that attack on credibility has been going on for longer than we think. Changing things slowly. Characterization.
Things may have changed after the flood too, when they didn't see animals certain times, and then they switched names or something, or
you just brought up a semi-good point. Because the dread of animals wasn't put on them until after, it wasn't until after the fall, it wasn't the flood. Yeah, dread of animals was after sin. Right?
It's after.
Yeah, it's after sin. Okay.
when it talks about the unicorn in the Bible, it talks about
Okay, so now we've thrown a new wrinkle in this whole thing. Lisa wants to know when it's talking about a unicorn in the Bible, it could be talking about a sea creature, then we're talking about narwhals. Wow. Unbelievable. I'm just giving a simple...
What do you think it is? I think it's...
A unicorn?
Yeah, a rhinoceros, or I don't know.
Oh, I actually have a picture of this animal that was an artist's depiction. It was this thing that looked like a rhino, but it was bigger, and it had one horn out of its nose. It felt like a rhinoceros.
I'm sure it was something like that.
Yeah. All right, any other things to talk about? Then we'll hit day 6 next week. I think day 6 and on, we're pretty safe.